We begin with a money laundering scandal engulfing Westpac, which has forced Chief Executive Brian Hartzer to step down. For more on this, I'm joined by Nine's finance editor Ross Greenwood. Ross, did the Chief Executive's move come as a surprise?
I don't think ultimately it was a surprise. It was inevitable that he had to go. It was inevitable that the chairman, Lindsay Maxted, one of the most exalted business people in Australia, that he had to go. He's announced he will go in the first half of next year. It was inevitable, really, that their head of risk and compliance, Ewan Crouch, a director, had to go. Will go before the annual meeting due to happen in 3 weeks' time. And this all came about as a result of the shock revelations from the anti-money laundering agency AUSTRAC that on 23 million occasions, this bank had basically failed to report potentially suspicious transactions. The worst of those transactions may have actually aided people to have exploited children in the Philippines. So under those circumstances, while the company tried to gut it out, put out a statement on Sunday saying, you know, we will investigate, everything will be done and we apologise and here's a set of actions. Not 48 hours later, they've changed their mind and decided that really the whole board had to go. And I think based on what had happened previously with the Commonwealth Bank, that's where the inevitability came.
It's a stunning capitulation, isn't it?
It is, there's no doubt. And so as a result, politicians of all sides today are talking about this. One of those is Jim Chalmers, the Shadow Treasurer. Here's a little of what he had to say.
I think Australians will be looking for all kinds of accountability when it comes to the behaviour of Westpac. They will welcome Brian Hartzer's resignation. There are a whole range of steps that Westpac clearly needs to take to clean up their act. They need to make sure that Australians can have confidence in Australia's oldest bank again.
So I understand also that the Treasurer will be speaking a little bit later about this. Also, Westpac right now is having a media conference where not only is the Chairman, Lindsay Maxted, but also the incoming Chief Executive, that is Peter King. He's going to be there for the interim period while they do a global search to find a new boss at Westpac. But the bottom line of this really is that this bank needed to restore confidence in its shareholders, in its customers and its staff, that after these shock revelations, that it really did have a way forward and its governance was under full control.
You'll have a big wrap-up at 6, Ross. Thank you. Well, Sydney grandmother is today fighting for her life as lawyers fight to overturn her death sentence and conviction for drug trafficking in Malaysia. This report from Nine's Renee Henry in Kuala Lumpur.
On and off death row for 5 years, today Maria Exposto asks the Appeals Court of Malaysia to not only scrap her death penalty but free her altogether. The Sydney grandmother's lawyer is confident of having her conviction quashed. They will argue legal technicalities after in 2014 she was caught at Kuala Lumpur's International Airport with more than a kilo of crystal meth stitched into her bag. She has always maintained that she was the innocent victim of an online romance scam that saw her befriend a stranger who asked her to take that bag to Australia but never mentioned drugs were inside. If they can't have the conviction quashed, instead lawyers will fight to have her death penalty replaced with a life sentence. They admit, though, that it will be near impossible, even though there are potential looming changes to the law here in Malaysia. Right now, death by hanging is mandatory for drug traffickers.
Well, next to Canberra, where there's a plan for more medical services at cheaper prices. Jonathan Kersley joins us. Jonathan, what's involved?
Well, Mark, this is quite a radical proposal from Health Minister Greg Hunt for private health to be able to cover things like knee and hip surgery and mental health treatment outside of hospitals. Minister Hunt is working on changes which could be rolled out around about the middle of next year, essentially to try and put the brakes on the rises to insurance premiums we've seen over recent years. A report released today by the Grattan Institute has found soaring private hospital bills and specialist fees are to blame for what is being seen as a crisis in this sector. People are quite simply dropping their private health cover over concerns it's not covering what they want it to at a price that is reasonable. 7,000 Australians aged between 25 and 29 have cancelled their cover in the last 3 months. In turn, that means, Mark, the cost load is shifting to older Australians who actually need the care and use it more. The Minister has already told insurers to go back to the drawing board on what they want premiums to be for the next 12 months.
I have rejected over 20 applications by private health insurers, and I've asked them to sharpen their pencils, to very much sharpen their pencils. In the last 2 years, we've delivered the lowest changes in 17 and 18 years.
But Labor says this latest idea to try and save consumers cash is just a thought bubble. Here's Shadow Health Minister Chris Bowen.
Release your policy, Greg. Tell us the details. Show us the modelling about how your idea will fix private health.
And Mark, if more people continue to dump their private health cover, that means that public hospital bills for the government could rise. That is a problem it doesn't want to have.
It affects so many people. Jonathan Kersley in Canberra, thank you. $87 million in emergency funding has been announced to help New South Wales communities suffering through the drought. The money has been set aside for major infrastructure projects and to cart water to the state's driest towns.
We want to make sure regional and rural communities don't run out of water. To do so, we've got to build the infrastructure today as well as the infrastructure for the future.
Much of this funding will actually be useful when it rains again, these pipelines to stop transmission losses.
Government ministers have been touring drought-affected towns, including Dubbo and Burke. Well, to the latest on the tragic deaths of two little girls found in a hot car in Queensland. Jessica Millwood tells us there's now an independent inquiry.
Well, this will be an independent and external review to find out who knew what, when, in relation to the case of 2-year-old Darcy and 1-year-old Chloe, with the Premier confirming the little girls were known to the Department of Child Safety. They were found dead in a hot car outside their Waterford West home on Saturday afternoon, their mother charged with their murder. The 27-year-old woman, Kerry-Ann Conley, remains behind bars. Her matter was briefly mentioned yesterday. It has been adjourned until next month, as well as those murder charges. She's also facing drugs charges, accused of possessing marijuana and a drug pipe on the day that her little girls passed away. Police continue their investigations and they're asking anyone to come forward, anyone that may have any information or seen the girls in the past 3 months. While the Child Safety Minister wouldn't comment on Chloe and Darcy's case in particular, she has revealed a staggering amount of children are referred to the Department of Child Safety each and every single year. 120,000 children in Queensland every year. That equates to 1 every 4 minutes being referred to dogs.
It's Millwood reporting there. Well, a cloud of smoke haze blown in from the bushfires has draped over Sydney, triggering a health warning for people with heart and lung conditions. Air quality across the city has been rated as very poor, with smoke expected to linger until this afternoon. Thunderstorms are forecast for later today. Would-be thieves have smashed their way into a shopping centre in Melbourne's southeast. 2 men used an SUV to ram into an ATM in Cranbourne East around 4 o'clock this morning. Despite causing significant damage, the crooks drove away empty-handed. Schoolies celebrations on the Gold Coast have taken a wild turn, with 50 nangs found in the Surfers Paradise Party precinct. Nangs are a small metal cylinder that usually contain a small amount of nitrous oxide, which is inhaled for a quick high. Those responsible are also believed to have smashed Christmas decorations on a lifeguard tower.